on the show about, were the founding fathers acting on their own, or were they attempting to pull the new territory of America, or what we're sold as the new territory of America? America could be way older, and that's just a psyop. But let's go with this story. That did they use the American Revolution to basically take the territories from the British Crown?
If you look at the relationship between the colonies and the British Crown, it was a mutually advantageous relationship. There was no reason for them to separate, because the Crown provided them money and protection, and the colonies provided them, raw materials. So it was mutually advantageous. It does appear that the Rothschilds tried, their typical strategy, divide and conquer. They kind of sowed discontent. One of the things that they did is, the colonies were printing their own money, their own script. They had prosperous societies.
Yeah.
The Rothschilds put an end to that, demanded that they take out loans from the Bank of England, which they control, thereby putting them into debt. That led to the Boston Tea Party. And then they bankrolled the Hessian mercenaries to attack them. They also pitted the Indians against them because the colonies wanted to move westward. So I think the Rothschilds were behind that war. I believe that the American Revolutionary, the leaders of the American Revolution were probably there were some who were aligned with Britain. There were some who were patriotic. But I think as a whole, they wanted to separate from this corrupt system. They knew what it was about. And I also ran across a report fairly recently that I thought was interesting, and that's that our system of government was based upon the Uruguay Indians. It wasn't actually the French, the Rational Enlightenment or the French Republic. It was the Uruguay Indians who had a representative government in which there were these different divisions, like we had the executive, judicial, legislative, that kind of provide a check on each other's power so that no one branch can become too powerful and dominate everybody else. It was like a mutuality of interest among the participating parties. And that was the type of government that the founding fathers based the new government upon and based the Constitution on. So I think a lot of the new ideas were coming from them, but I think, as you were asking, did the separation need to happen? It probably didn't. But by that point, the Rothschilds had insinuated themselves within the crown, and they were intentionally sowing division to create the separation, put both parties into their debt, and then to financially control both sides.
Yeah, I mean. And you kind of watch, this is their play. This is how they always do it, man. And what they do is they I mean, you look at it even on a smaller scale, like what's going on in Venezuela. I mean, like the CIA, which I think is just an arm of the international banking cabal. They're not, to me, at all law enforcement. I see them as more as let's just say the security for the elites. Their job is to secure their investments, secure their natural resources, go in, destabilize, come in, and just flip everything. And we're seeing it happen right now in Venezuela. And guess where else we're seeing it happen? In America. I mean, like AIPAC is completely controlling every part of our government right now, and they're doing it brazenly in the daylight. They're not even hiding it anymore, and they're bragging about it. They'll tweet about it, like, dog, we gave this guy 100,000. Bang, we got another seat, and that's what's happening.
That is true. I know that the Rockefellers had stated that we have to have a communist revolution in America if we're to secure control over it, and the Rothschilds have controlled our government since the Civil War. Like they transformed the federal government into a corporation. And so I think it makes sense. They built up AIPAC, and AIPAC, Israel is their creation. AIPAC is their creation, and they're using money, as they've always done, to kind of influence candidates, like to buy their policy. But either way, I think whoever is in power would have to serve the Rothschild syndicate because they are essentially employees of that corporation. And then if you don't play ball, I think you don't wind up staying in power for very long.
Is controlled demolitions of empires.
That's correct. One thing that I was one point I hadn't planned to talk about it, but I think we can, that the communist Christians took back control of the Kremlin. And so essentially we had eliminated the Bolshevik problem. Then our people, we had Larry Summers and our federal government with the first Bush administration and the Clinton administration reinstalled the old communist Bolsheviks into power within the Kremlin by way of the reformers. We then rebuilt the Soviet machine, by giving billions of dollars to the Russians. This created this oligarch class. These people were looting the country. They were looting corporations. They were, claiming all the resources for themselves. And then as a result of this, we have a transnational crime syndicate that is flush with cash that is now consolidated around the Kremlin. And these are like people who are far worse than the mafia. They have a Bolshevik mindset, and then they're tapping into these international networks that Rothschild had already set up, for the drug laundering, drug trafficking, arms trafficking, human trafficking, and it's just getting so corrupt. Like it's kind of spreading like a cancer through all the nations. I think they may be unable to control what the monster that they've created.
Well, they love the monster to be out of control because they can make money off that.
That's
the
true.
monster goes around and stomps on everything. They can make money fighting the monster, rebuilding after the monster, being the monster.
You're right.
So, Candace Owens been talking about this a lot. It's like, this is Sam speaking, not Susan. Like, why is the Holocaust such a big thing in our pop culture, but the Bolshevik Jews killing off Russian Christians at 11 million or 10 million, whatever that number is, nobody ever talks about that. There's a lot behind that. But if you study, Susan, I'd love to hear your opinion because, I am full on in like wars on Twitter, trying to tell everybody that Hitler was a controlled opposition. He was used by the international banking cabal, at the minimum, the Federal Reserve of America, to go in and just destroy Germany from within, just like they did with the Cultural Revolution of China, and just like they did with the Bolshevik Revolution in America, and in Russia, and when you kind of look what's going on in America, it's kind of a combination of almost all three of them, but it's definitely two of them. It is the Cultural Revolution of China and the Bolshevik Revolution of Russia combined into one to try to destroy America from the inside.
That's true. And they're also trafficking drugs into our country and, which are killing our youth. They're fomenting unrest within society. And I think, as you also pointed out, they're demoralizing the people, with corrupt leaders, and then with really crazy, social justice agenda points that, really kind of undermine the fabric of society.
You are so correct. And, again, why do I say what I say on the internet? Why do I do what I do on the internet? One, it's funny, but two, it's that I am pushing back against this cultural revolution that is not real. It's not real. It's astroturfed. It's completely funded by the same people who did the exact same thing in China. Get the youth to hate the older generation and want to destroy them at all, and they don't even understand what they're doing. And then you listen, dude. You can say whatever you want about China. There's a reason why they have to steal all of our technology, because they destroyed all the creative people. They literally had 100 days of roses, and everyone's like, dude, I don't like this government. 100 days over, boom, 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 boom. All the creative people are gone. So then you get in the, it's like. So you get into Germany. Germany has World War I, okay? They basically want to get the pharmaceutical companies out of Germany. Germany is also part of the Abrahamic apocalypse prophecies, that they're going to lead the pagans. So you keep destroying them so they can't get it together. But you have, so World War One destroys Germany. They set up the Bank of International Settlements to basically just siphon wealth from Germany so they can never get it right. The bankers set up shop there. And then they're going to let this guy Hitler just naturally just grow up and want to fight them. I mean, you got to be absolutely ridiculous to believe that. And then, dude, he had a slush fund in which all these corporations and bankers put money into. But he comes up to power, gets them annihilated again. That's the whole point. Hitler was 100% controlled. Any thoughts?
Yeah, he was also built up by the Rockefellers in order to threaten England to have England give up control of the Saudi oil, so the Rockefellers could control it and use the Saudi oil for U.S. imperialism, by way of the World Bank. That was another point. And of course, there are by some accounts, Hitler may very well have been a Rothschild. He was the grandson whose mother was allegedly raped at a Rothschild mansion. He himself, he was a poor artist in Austria, but somehow this poor artist who's just trying to find himself becomes the leader of a nation. Well, before he was a leader of a nation, he was trained at the Tavistock Institute, to project his voice in the way that he did, and was he's very manic and very, dictatorial in his style. And the actions that he took provided the pretext to, with what he was doing with Jews, to create Israel, and to promote Zionism. So he was used strategically by both the Rothschilds and the Rockefellers, to advance their personal financial objectives and political objectives.
So you believe that's crazy? So a big part of what I think Hitler was there to give them a reason to take Israel. I think, you got to be like, this guy's like, he's fighting the bankers, but at the end, he gave them everything they wanted. Like at the end, like it just worked out for them perfectly at the end. So he gives them Israel. And then, does the crown end up giving up the Saudi oil? Is that what you're saying?
What I think happened is that the Brits had a very tight relationship with the Saudis. I think by terrorizing England, England was able to, the Rockefellers convinced England to surrender the Saudi oil as long as the Rockefellers, who were the shadow power behind the United States, could bring the United States into war against Germany, a creation, we created Nazi Germany, Wall Street did. We could bring them against Nazi Germany to, on behalf of England, crush the Nazis, and then in turn, we would be rewarded with the oil. So the Rockefellers held on to the oil long enough to launch the petrodollar. Then the oil was nationalized. And I think once it was nationalized, it was returned to the Saudis. But the Saudis were by that point controlled by the Rothschilds. So it appears that, that the oil is changing hands, but it's really a way. What happened was that the elites were kind of wrestling the asset away from separate nations and their governments and governmental controls, and putting it within their own hands, within the hands of their proxies.